And then you probably turned in work that was not at a B level.
Not be worthy. Well, not do that again.
All right. All right. Are we ready with our voices off, Henry? We ready? All right. Unit 3. What is it? Day what? Day 5. There we go. Oh, this part. Cinco de Mayo. Not even
Mister, you just graded the cosmologies and revised.
Yeah.
That's why I got a 0.
Because you didn't do them.
Oh, I was not trying to put this a little bit back.
Yeah, but then when I gave extra work time for the Jubilee year, you still didn't do it. You just turned in blank documents.
She just didn't want her to have nothing. Shut up, William. You literally.
Hold on. Let me do this.
Is it 7? Yeah.
Make sure they're dissing us.
Why are you drawing a clock? It's 6. What is happening?
Clock your
T. Clock your T.
All right. Yours. All right. So now that we have our distracting nonsense out of the way, right? We're done with that. It is 11. It's 11:07. Thank you so much, Evan. 11:7:25. We're talking today. We're going to introduce 2 books at once. We're going to look at the characters. We're focused specifically, though, for the chapters. If you have this on the final exam, we have 1 Samuel 1 through 3. All right. The book of 1st and 2nd Samuel, I'm saying it's the books. We call them 2 books. We're introducing it, though, as kind of 1 book. Originally, it was 1 book. It should have been, we were just on Ruth, and we read it, we did it. It's like, yeah, like a page and a half. So, or 2 pages. So now we're at 1st and 2nd Samuel. We're going to get David, Saul, a bunch of big highlights. You guys probably know a lot of these stories already. The stories we're going to be discussing in the next few classes. But 1st and 2nd Samuel, I want to introduce the book and the character. The book, it used to be 1 single book just called Samuel, the book of Samuel. Does anybody know why it was split into 2 books? Yeah. Okay. Why? Does anybody have another guess as to why it's split into 2 books? It's too big to fit on a single scroll, so they had to split it into. That's true. I'm not joking. That sounds like a joke. The real reason that we call it 1st and 2nd Samuel is because they just had to do it on 2 scrolls, so they couldn't. It became 2 books. But this, all right. Introduction to Samuel, the book and character. Introduction to Samuel, the character and the book. Character and book. As a reminder, just because I don't write it on the board doesn't mean I want you to write it. If I say something over and over, write it down. If I say this is important or I care about it, or if you think it's neat, write it down. Your job is to get as much info from these as you can, because these lectures can easily be turned into at least 1 or 2 paragraphs of that essay that I ask you guys to do. All right, use these lecture notes to create your essay. Some people are able to get both paragraphs and then find a quick source with no issue. Today's stories are going to emphasize leaders and, leaders and sacrifice. And I'm going to put this, the institution. I'm going to explain this in just a moment. All right. One of the big things in the books of 1st and 2nd Samuel is the institution. Please close the Chromebook, Brooklyn. The institution, Annalise, close the Chromebook, of sacrifice, meaning the role, the job, the task. All right. Institution meaning task, not like a building, but like the task of it, the process of it. It matters as a thing, all right? It's not this concept of, oh, well, I'm sacrificing. But when I sacrifice an animal, when I slaughter an animal, how do I do that correctly? First and Second Samuel treats that seriously. What? There's very specific ways. So we're going to talk shortly about this in just a moment. But first, what we need to realize, I'm going to just refer to this as Samuel. Samuel, I'm going to say the book is theologized history. All right, I'm going to write down a big word for you in a moment because I like the word. My 10-year-old just learned it the other day, and it's a neat word. But Samuel, the book, is theologized history. Theologized history. Does anybody have a guess as to what this would mean?
Theology.
Okay, theology, real fake history? What do you mean by that?
Like mythos.
Oh, faith and history? Okay, so here's what it is. The author, and I would be writing this down, please, that the author wants you to understand the events, but has reworked them to teach you theology. So, they have changed the events in order to push a particular theological narrative.
Wants you to understand what?
Wants you to understand the events, but shaped by particular theology. They have a particular theology in mind, all right? However, you don't have to do word for word, get that idea down as notes. That you have to, the author wants you to have specific theology and patterns in your brain. We're also going to look at some of the ways that this is possibly a political text. Yeah.
Can you say it again?
Yeah. Theologized history. The author wants you to know the facts, but they also, most importantly, care about the theology. They're going to rework the history to teach particular theology. All right. And here's one of the ways that this works, and we have to realize this. Ancient authors saw history or historical events They saw historical events as malleable. I'm going to teach you this word in a moment. This is not, you cannot put this on your sheet because that sheet is only for Unit 2 or Unit 1 vocabulary. But maybe if I do this another time, this will be helpful. Malleable. M-A-L-E. M-A-L-E-A-B-L-E. Malleable. I love this word. It's just fun to say. It means that you can reshape it. You can manipulate it and mess with it. You can change it. It doesn't take away from the truth value of history for you to move it and change it. At least in the ancient author's view. All right, so ancient authors saw historical events as malleable, meaning I can reshape them because the accuracy of the events is not the important part. The theology. All right, when we look at theologized history like Samuel, author is speaking to a particular time, is speaking to their time. All right, author is speaking to their time. Do we remember when most of this Bible was most of the Bible, the Tanakh, was redacted and being edited together? Do we remember that?
Yeah.
What's the general time period, or just the event that's happening?
Exile.
Exile is happening. All right, so exile is happening. They're seeing this happen. So when they're looking back at their stories, the events that's happening for them, they're going to reshape some of this history to tell the theology of their setting. Yeah. Malleable, it means that you're behind. Malleable means you can reshape it and change it. It can be easily manipulated and maneuvered. So, malleable. All right. They are going to speak to their particular time and place in history. They're going to tell some stories. They're going to rewrite some of these events. I'm going to erase all this stuff, guys. Sorry. I need this space on the board. All right. Well, I shouldn't have erased my clock or my tea. All right. Now, here's where we got. I'm going to outline our characters, and we're going to go from here. We're going to see each of these characters. We could talk for a while. We're going to see quickly. I'll do this. I didn't do this for other classes. I will for you. We see Hannah. Motif. We've talked about that before. Of lowly woman being cared for. We talked about this with Ruth, right? Yeah, you can go. That even the lowly is cared for and looked after in God's mind. So Hannah fits this motif. We see this from a literary structure. It's starting with we get this long, beautiful psalm where she talks about God's positioning and placement and care for the poor. That he will take care of those that are impoverished and suffering. If the ancient writer is adding this during the time of exile, it's a pretty valuable, important thing. All right, and then we move, so this is Samuel's mom. We move right on to this guy named Eli. So we get Eli. Now, you ask anybody in the Bible department, they're going to agree. Eli's a terrible person. So, and then say, well, what do you think about the Bible character Eli? And they go, we don't like him much either. So,
They don't like you?
that's the joke. So, Eli is, he shows the fall of priests corruption of the Levites. Now, we could get way more into this stuff, but I would argue that at least symbolically, what we see straight away from the jump at this book, the introduction to this book, is to say priests are not very good. We don't like them. Right from the jump, the priesthood is bad and corrupted. So the writer seems to be blaming them for something. Because they want you to think, if we think of everything in literature has value, right, this is one of the things they're wanting you to say. And why is that? Because priests corrupted sacrifice, causing death, causing suffering, I'll say instead. All right. One of the things of the prophets, as we get further into this, the prophetic writers, Ezekiel, Isaiah, Jeremiah, especially Ezekiel, he's my favorite, they talk all the time about the institute of the corruption of the priesthood. Right? This is a major theme for the prophets, is the corruption of the priesthood. Which is why I say it's definitely here too. It's because it shows up constantly, and they blame it for the exile. Right? The reason that Israel is in exile is because the priesthood has started corrupting sacrifice. They haven't done the right way of worshiping God. They have worshiped God the wrong way, and they have taken advantage of the poor. They have destroyed social justice. They have caused suffering to the Israelites and caused suffering and against God's name. This is what the priests have done. From the jump, our author is going to be saying this as well. Because Eli, this old guy with his sons, knows about the corruption and lets it happen. Then we're going to see our character Samuel. Judge and prophet. It's hard to decide which one he fits into better, but he's both. Speaks for, and sometimes ahead of God, of Yahweh.
Is that bad?
Well, that's a good question. You should speak for God if you're a prophet. That's the job description of a prophet. Sometimes what Samuel does, and this is where we get maybe the author's opinion or how it looks, is where we get those multiple voices that happen in the Bible. Sometimes Samuel makes a decision and says, God's doing this, and God has to back him up. He actually says, God's going to do this and make this promise. When it gets to Saul, who we'll talk about in just a second, he says, God's going to do this, and then God says, oh, yeah, now I have to go do that thing. Right? Sometimes he speaks ahead of God. Theologically, it's a little bit weird. It's where we see this theology in this text, in this book, where we're seeing a very human-feeling God. God feels and sounds pretty human. God regrets. God weeps. He actually repents of making Saul king. We see that this author seems to think of God in a very relational way, but also a very private way. Right? I didn't notice this until recently, just a couple of days ago. These same stories are covered in 1st and 2nd Chronicles. I knew that. But those books, tell these stories where God is very public and vocal, whereas God is very private. And God gives orders to Samuel and a few individuals in this story. So God is pretty private and feels very close. All right, then we get our next character. You guys have heard this name before, Saul or Saul, as some of you say. All right. What other nations want a king to be? Other nations want a king to be. On paper, Saul would be a pretty decent king, half-decent king. But in reality, he's not. The Bible paints him as not a great king. So, what other nations would want to be? He's the king. Does anybody know why they make him king? Anybody know why Israel decides he should be their king? As a hint, same reason that a lot of students, a lot of people in my life and my friends would decide that I should be king of something.
Because their friends speak to him?
Because I'm tall and handsome. Got him. All right. So the real reason for Saul being king is because they just say he's tall and handsome. He looks good. They say we want a king like other nations. They're looking to be like other nations. Now, he loses the right to be king because he does sacrifice wrong. We're going to find over and over people get in trouble for doing sacrifice. They lose their station in life because of the way they do sacrifice wrong. And then we get David. As for the description of David, I'm going to say David and sons. He has a bunch of kids, or a few sons that are prominent. We'll deal with this later, is my definition here. We don't have time to deal with David with this later. We don't have time for this. We have to treat this carefully. I'm going to give a trigger warning that when we get to there, we will be talking about the fact that David is not a great guy, but we're supposed to like him and say that we should be like David and have, because he's the guy after God's own heart. That's what it says, but he kills a lot of people, murders people, rapes quite a few women, turns a blind eye when his son rapes his daughter. Right? That happens in these stories. We're going to look at some of these stories. A lot of rape and a lot of murder, right, from David specifically. So we get a lot of this stuff. We're not going to deal with this today, but it is some things we're going to be talking about in the next few classes. David and Bathsheba, if you guys know that story, it's not some lovey-dovey they were connected story. That is non-consensual sex, right? It's by force. So we'll be talking about that later. All right, that's all that I'm going to lecture on. That shouldn't be too many notes for you guys, I hope. But what we're going to do now is read 1st and 2nd Samuel. Then you guys will each need to read one chapter. I'm going to put them on the board, the 4 possible chapters, as groups of 4, and write those quick paragraphs and do some quick research. All right, so you can go to the bathroom. Oh, no. All right, so that being said, open your Bibles to 1st and 2nd Samuel, and then move around the room to wherever you need to be to read best and read along.